Check, check, sound check. Can you guys hear me? Check, check, sound check. All right, there we go. Cool. Wow, that was long. We're just waiting on Doug. I don't know. I'm a little early today just because I wanted to make sure people had the ability to log on. I'm actually going to post this on Telegram. Excellent, excellent. So where is everybody from? I saw Southern California. Joanne, did you tell me where you were from? Oh, Penny, it's going to be all right. This is 3 days. This is just an hour. Yes, PV. I know, John. By the way, these hats are in production now. Chino Hills, very nice. You're close. I'm actually out on about halfway between. No, I'm in Beaumont. I don't know if you know where that is, Joanne. Oh, where are you headed? Watchful on where you headed. Duluth, Minnesota. Oof. I bet it gets cold up there. Carroll Sherrill, Orange County. I'm always get a smile when I see Southern California people. Yeah, I grew up here. Actually, I maintain Arizona residency. My parents live out here. My dad's not well, so I basically am here with I'm here with my folks to make sure they're good. Oh yeah, Clark's. Well, I guess that's debatable, right, Bobby? I'm watching my crypto today. East Valley. I think we're in East Valley, Tinkerbell. I think I don't know if it was you who I remember talking to somebody about East Valley. I lived for a time in Ahwatukee, which I guess is considered East Valley, but it's actually more south. Nice Rancho, Scotland. Wow. I'm Elizabeth. You will appreciate that I am descendant from John Wallace, who was William Wallace's brother. So William Wallace was an uncle. Was my uncle, however many generations removed. And my mother's mother was Wallace, and my mother was Armstrong. So I'm very much Scottish. Yeah, I thought that was you, Tinkerbell. I see so much. It's hard to remember. Nice. San Diego's a great place to get away. The weather's gorgeous. I'm wearing my Armed Society is a Polite Society. I'm all 2-8 out for this weekend, or for these two shows. I'm actually going to call Doug, see where he is. Okay. Hello, Sassy. I think today was the day they had the memorial for Scott's dad. I reached out to him a little bit earlier, but I haven't heard anything from him. Oh, it's my pleasure. Very much a fan of this Watchful One, very much. I met Doug a long time ago, actually. Ironically, I met Doug at a gun show. And we exchanged information. I got on his email list, and then funny course of events. I wanted to connect. I'm a big fan of the work of Trevor Loudon, and Trevor Loudon was coming out to Corona, which is near me, and I wanted to go meet Trevor Loudon. Well, when the event where Trevor Loudon was coming to speak was the class that Doug was giving, the Constitution class in Orange County, or in Corona, and that was when I was like, hey, this is actually pretty cool. I want to do this. So that was probably 3 years ago. So I've been following the Constitution. I've been doing Doug's classes for a long time. Hello, Harriet from Arlington. His father had a stroke and passed away. Yeah, the weather's always great in San Diego, Tinkerbell. Always. Come on, Doug. All right. So Doug is late now for a second week in a row. We're gonna have to give him a little crap about that. Sandra, today we are on the Second Amendment, which is, you should be able to see the back of my wallpaper. Very apropos for the Second Amendment. Actually, it was the opposite, Sassy. I'll let you use your imagination on that one. $131 already. That's pretty good. Hello, Shelly Belly. Yes, Steve, your governor is fantastic. There he is. Well, it's about doggone time.
Yeah, it is. Dang it.
I got a whole crew here waiting for you.
Well,
Did you turn your background on, brother?
oh, geez. Oh, my wife signed out of my thing. Hold on. Wow. See, I leave for a little while. My wife messes everything up.
Sure, blame it on your wife. You're
That's all
late.
her fault. Yeah.
Dude, it took you 12 minutes to do what you had to do.
Took longer.
Yes, Sassy, I'm in the People's Republic of California. Actually, both Doug and I are. Did you go to that thing last night with Brady, where he was some event that he got to meet Larry Elder? Were you at that event?
No, I had a class in Huntington Beach last night. Well, I'm totally signed off. Wow.
We're working on a few technical glitch.
It's all my fault. This is yeah, no,
You can see in the background, you can see all of Doug's reading material.
oh, that's nothing. That's like a small.
So I'm as Doug fixes his
Background.
background, I just want to let everybody know that you probably have some preconceived notions of the Second Amendment, and you're gonna need to table them and put your emotions aside in this class. I remember when the first Second Amendment class was that I went to with Doug. I was like so eager to get in that class. I was just chomping at the bit, and I missed out on some good things because of I let my emotions run a little high. But how many classes have we done now, Doug, with the Second Amendment? Probably like five or six, maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah, something like that. Maybe longer, maybe more. But
but I've learned a lot I've learned a lot, but Doug actually changed my mind on some of the state laws on guns and firearms. So, and I just want you to give you some perspective on what he's done to me. And I'm extremely pro 2A guy. So he made some arguments that we need to just, I guess the thing is like, table the emotion. Table the emotion. What'd you do, bro? Go to your settings. Go to your settings.
I can't find settings. It's like
open
gone.
up. Okay, open up Zoom.
It's open.
Zoom. No, I'm not talking about the Windows Zoom. I'm talking.
Yeah, that's what I have open.
Okay, so
it's gone.
Okay, so go to what's gone? The image.
It's acting as if I've never been on this before, and I'm signing up again.
All right, well then let's just table it, and we'll fix it later, and we'll just go.
Yeah. I don't know why.
Don't worry about it. We'll get it going because the people are waiting.
All right. You have to look at my mess in here. So
all right. Well, I laid the foundation, brother.
And just like that, it popped up.
There we go. Woo-hoo.
Goodness gracious me! I went to leave it, and then it totally reset. It was really weird.
Elizabeth, I have not been to Scotland, but I do intend to go someday.
I want to go to Wales. I have family actually out there.
Well, she's from Scotland. She's actually visiting. She's joining us from Scotland, and I had to tell her that
Very cool.
I'm descendant from John Wallace, who was William Wallace's brother.
Really, you are? Well, that explains your attitude, then, right?
Exactly.
I've got a. I'm mostly. I have of all of my whatever. I'm mostly Welsh. Actually, I'm Welsh, English, Scottish, and Irish, Dutch, Swedish, French.
So you like
Blackfoot Indian.
So you don't pay your bets, is what you're saying.
Well, my grandfather on my mom's side was Irish, and my grandmother grew up on a reservation. Was alcohol a problem? Possibly. All right. Hi, everybody. Second Amendment, and now that he's hyped it all up, let's get you all riled up. When we talk about the Bill of Rights, we talk about the amendments. We have to remember, and I'm sorry, now my phone's like making noises and stuff. I'll turn that down. Yeah, silence your phones if you have a microphone in front of you. Oh, that's me. But anyway, when we go through, let's back up a little bit. Your rights, we've talked about this, but I want to make sure you understand this. Nice groundwork here, foundation. Your rights belong to you. God gave them to you. So first of all, you don't have your rights because of a piece of paper. The piece of paper is about what government's authorities are regarding society, an orderly society, and even sometimes our rights. But the federal government, being the central government, its job is very simple when it comes to our rights. Don't touch. First Amendment begins with the words, Congress shall make no law. Second Amendment, shall not be infringed. Third Amendment, no soldier shall. Fourth Amendment, right in the middle, shall not be violated. It's language telling Congress and the federal government, don't touch, none of your business. And then Mr. James Madison in Federalist Papers number 45 helped explain it a little bit for us as well. And I'll pull it up in a minute. What he explains, now I can't find that either, but that's okay. What he explains in what he wrote is that our rights, when it comes to authorities, differ depending on who the authority is. Let me back up. Well, Doug, I don't want anybody making laws regarding my rights. Well, somebody has to make some laws. You have a right to go through the intersection, right? You have the right to go through the intersection any speed you want, regardless of what the moment is. You go flying through, somebody else comes flying through. What happens? You wreck into each other. Well, gosh, he interfered with my right to go through the intersection. No, you guys wrecked into each other because you thought you had because your right and his right interfered with each other. So sometimes government has to make laws regarding our rights, but we don't want the federal government doing it. None of their business. They weren't created for that. The federal government was created to handle the external issues, things like war, trade with other countries, stuff like that. So, and besides, every community, every state, every city, every region, it's going to have its own culture. It's going to be different on some of this stuff. Some towns might not need a stoplight. They put a stop sign. It's a smaller population. Some might need a stoplight. But did they call Washington, D.C., hey, we want to put a stoplight at such and such intersection? Just want to check with you guys, see if it's okay. No, it's none of the federal government's business. When it comes to our rights, sometimes laws need to be made, but the federal government has no authority whatsoever. Now, I'm going to read to you a section from Federalist Paper number 45. It was written by James Madison, and I'm going to use that as our foundation here to kind of help us understand a little bit first, okay? It says, the powers delegated by the proposed Constitution. Remember, at this point, the Constitution is proposed. They're trying to convince New York to ratify it. The powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Powers delegated to the federal government are few and defined. In other words, there's very few of them, and they're listed. Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. Numerous and indefinite. The former, federal government, will be exercised principally on external objects as war, peace, negotiation with, and foreign commerce. with which the last power of taxation will, for the most part, be connected, because you got to fund those things. The powers reserved to the several states will extend to all objects which, listen carefully, in the ordinary course of affairs concern the lives, liberties, and properties of the people and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. State handles state stuff. Lives, liberties, and properties. What are those? Those are your rights. So the state does have authority to make laws regarding rights. The operations of the federal government will be most extensive and important in times of war and danger. Those of the state governments in times of peace and security. Now, in the First Amendment, remember we're talking about that, and there's 5 rights that are enumerated in the First Amendment, right? We have religion, speech, press, assembly, petition. And that first one, for example, religion, there's an establishment clause. It says in the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. There is to be no state church by Congress. Congress cannot say, oh, you all have to be Baptist, or you all have to be Anglican, or whatever. And that church doesn't get tax money. And if you're not a member of that church, you can't vote, can't run for, no, can't do that. It says so in the First Amendment. At the time of the First Amendment, and I've always told people that 11 states had established churches. I have to change that to 10 because I always forget that Virginia got rid of its established church the year prior, 1 year before. And so it's really 11 goes to 10. Yeah, only 10, not 11. That's the right word. But anyway, when that establishment clause went into place, did all of those states suddenly get rid of their established churches? No. Why? Because it said Congress shall make no law. The Bill of Rights, according to the preamble of the Bill of Rights, was created for the purpose of making sure that to prevent the misconstruction or abuse of its powers, the federal government's powers. So originally, even the most liberal historian will tell you, originally the Bill of Rights applied only to the federal government, not to the states. I'm not saying the states can stomp all over your rights. They're still your rights. God gave them to you. They belong to you. States are not supposed to stomp on your rights. However, because it's a local government, it's closer to you than the federal government, they're given a little leeway because somebody has to make some of the laws necessary regarding those rights, which brings us to the Second Amendment. Don't get me wrong, man. I'm one of the most staunch gun-owning Second Amendment guys there is. I love my firearms. I love to shoot my firearms. And I go through a lot of ammo when I do so. Last time I bought ammunition, my car was low riding. I had enough ammunition to start my own war, and I'm good with it. I believe that we should be able to do that. And yes, Democrats, there's a reason to have that much ammo. Well, what did Biden say? Well, you're worried about the deer having an uprising? Hey, man, sometimes it takes 24 shots to take that sucker down. Sometimes it takes a large magazine.
Well, I like to say rights don't need a need.
Well, and that's true. Rights don't need. And you know what's funny too is I've always believed that guns are like insurance. You probably will never need it. You hope to not have to use it, but when you need it, you're glad you have it.
Exactly.
All right. So anyway, I'm one of the biggest Second Amendment guys there is. You know, I own a number of firearms just for the sake of not letting the NSA know exactly how many I have for various reasons. I'm not going to give you a number, but trust me, I'm not worried. I'm not nervous. We're in good shape. As I like to tell people, if anybody breaks into my home and threatens harm to my family, the only way they're leaving is in a body bag. And I promise that. Now, that all said, I am really happy. I am thrilled that my 8-year-old granddaughter cannot walk down the street to the gun store and purchase a firearm. There's a law in place that doesn't let her. Somebody wrote that law. But the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. The words shall not be infringed is shall not infringe upon for any reason in any way at all. Background check, that's infringing. Limits on how many you can buy, that's infringing. Limits on what kind of firearm you can buy, that's infringing. Shall not be infringed means that every single federal gun law is unconstitutional. Now, I live in the state of California, and you know it's bad when even the liberals in other states call it California. It's so bad here that even the lefties are trying to leave. And they have nasty gun laws that I really don't like. And they have every authority to do so. And if I don't like it, I need to stop it. Well, Doug, it violates the Second Amendment. No, it doesn't. Second Amendment was written to tell Congress, you can't make any gun laws. The federal government's the danger here. We don't want them messing with our guns. None of their business. They were created to handle the external stuff. But sometimes there needs to be gun laws, like the one that doesn't allow my 8-year-old granddaughter to go buy a gun. Now that said, I was one time teaching my Temecula class, this young man named Bo, who still comes to class. And if you're paying attention, Bo, good to see you. And he says, hey, there shouldn't even be a law stopping kids from buying guns. So, all right, when you're a parent, I'll ask you that question again, buddy. Shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. Now, there is a theory out there. There's an idea based on the 14th Amendment that at the time of the writing and ratification of the 14th Amendment, the Bill of Rights stopped applying to only the federal government and began to apply to the states as well. That is called an incorporation of the Bill of Rights to the states. You can look it up. Even Wikipedia has it, and they actually wrote their article accurately, which was shocking to me. Incorporation of the Bill of Rights to the states. And what that means is because of a clause in the 14th Amendment, which I'll read in a second, the Bill of Rights, as written, and the way it applies to the federal government, also applies to states in the same way. 14th Amendment says, no state shall make or enforce any law that which shall abridge the privileges and immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property, your rights, without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction equal protection of the laws. To me, that doesn't say incorporation of the Bill of Rights of the states, but there's been an argument that it does. And because of that, they say, well, now, Doug, the Bill of Rights also apply to the states. So therefore, the Second Amendment does too. And everybody says, well, Doug, you should be happy. We don't want the states infringing on our gun rights. Well, then who's going to make the laws that needs to be made? Shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. Absolutely no law. So if the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment, also applies to states, every single state law would also be unconstitutional. Do you agree that felons who committed violent crimes with firearms should at least have a process to get a gun, or maybe not be allowed to because they're a felon? Do you believe that's a possible law that you might approve of?
Are you asking me?
It's a rhetorical question. I'm sure everybody's out there going, you asking me? No.
Because you know my answer.
Well, and deep down, I think anybody and everybody should be able to defend themselves. And trust me, when the
my answer is okay. So my thing on the prohibited possessor thing, the prohibited possessor really comes out of the 1968 Gun Control Act,
right?
And that is that's unconstitutional, and that is the my feeling is that regardless of what crime you've committed, if you are no longer incarcerated or you no longer on parole,
you should have
you've paid your time, you've paid your dues to society. You should now have your rights restored regardless.
I agree with you. Not every conservative does. That's the reason why I asked that question.
Right.
Because there are some people who believe, well, maybe there should be some laws. And when it comes to my 8-year-old granddaughter, no, except for maybe Bo, I think most people are going to be like, yeah, I don't know if I'm thrilled with 8-year-old.
You're talking about the 8-year-old granddaughter, and I understand that. The premise that you're using on the 8-year-old granddaughter is she's not of age. She doesn't understand firearms, and therefore it's because she doesn't understand it, she would be a danger to herself and to others because of that. And I get that. That's absolutely understandable.
Right. But do we want the federal government making that law and not allowing
No.
them to? Shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. Do we want the federal government making those laws? No. But do those laws need to be made by somebody? Yes. Maybe the culture is different. I mean, maybe the laws in Chicago need to be different than the laws in Peoria, or the laws in Wyoming should be different than the laws in California for various cultural reasons. That should be up to each different state. Do we really want a one size fits all, or no, there's no law whatsoever? And even back in the beginning, while Biden was wrong in the sense that he said, well, the Second Amendment, there was limitations. Couldn't buy a cannon. Well, actually, he could. I have a friend that actually owns 4 cannons.
Yeah, all it is a destructive device. It's just it's an upper level. It's an upper level. It's like buying a class 3. It just takes a little bit more.
Biden's saying, well, you couldn't own a cannon. Yeah, you could. There was not a single federal law regarding guns back then. Not one. And for the most part, there wasn't any state laws either. Some neighborhoods, some communities did have their laws. If you're going to come into town, you got to check your gun at the entry of town. Or if you're going to go into the saloons, you're going to check your firearm at the door, depending on the town. Some towns didn't care, and that's okay if they want to do that.
Alcohol and firearms generally don't mix well, especially when you're drunk.
Yeah, well, alcohol and firearms, alcohol and the opposite sex. Either way, it's a very dangerous combination. Put all 3 together, you're really in trouble. But and that's okay. Each community made that decision, but it was a local decision. Local decisions on a local issue. There's no Second Amendment there. It's up to that. It's like a store who says, we don't want anybody walking in with a firearm. In the state of Oregon, it's very easy to get a concealed carry permit, and they are an open carry state. You don't need a permit to openly carry. If everybody can see it, you're allowed to carry it in public. But there are some stores that have signs on their door that says you may not enter this store with a firearm. Well, is that violating the Second Amendment? No, that's a business saying, I'm not cool with firearms in my business. Local decision. They can do that. That's okay. I remember there was
actually, I want to tell you when I was a assistant manager at the Prescott, Arizona Staples, we had a sign.
Oh, you mean Prescott? Oh,
Prescott. Did I say Prescott?
Yes.
Did I really say Prescott? Oh my God, Prescott. I never say that. So when I was in
I've only been there once and I know how to pronounce it.
No, I deserve that. That's on my license. But we had signs on our doors, and the city came around and said, you can't have a sign. You cannot prohibit people from carrying firearms in your store.
If that's a state law, then that's a state law.
Well, and I want to say that Arizona was the first state to go constitutional carry.
There's like 20 of them now.
Right.
21 and something like that.
I believe Arizona, because they were the first state that said that you didn't have to have a permit to conceal. Now, if you do have a permit to conceal in Arizona, you have you can carry your firearm legally in other places where it's not permitted to carry if you're not licensed. Whatever. The point is that Arizona, you don't need a permit to conceal.
Well, and that's the state's decision. I'm glad you brought that up, because the state makes that decision. State constitution, state government, state law. The state can make that decision regarding that. Mm-hmm. Not the federal government. None of the federal government's business. Right. But if Arizona says, you know what? We want everybody to be able to carry into any business, then they can do that. Oregon allows businesses to say, we don't want you to carry a gun into this business. But they have an open carry. You're allowed to open carry anywhere in the state unless except for federal building, except for state buildings, government buildings, and any business has a sign that says thanks, but no thanks. Now, there was a restaurant in Baton Rouge who was actually giving discounts to people if they would show their firearm. Carry at this restaurant and you get a 10% discount on your meal. And CBS had caught wind of this, sent a reporter out there. And the reporter is talking to the owner of the restaurant and says, well, does it bother you that so many people with such dangerous weapons on them are in your restaurant? He says, what are you talking about? He says to the reporter, this is the safest restaurant in the United States. Gun stores don't get robbed for a reason. Now, that all said, get back to what I was talking about before. Those were all state decisions, though. The state made the law saying, yes, you can, no, you can't. That's up to the state because the state's closest to us. Let me give you another story to help you kind of understand what I'm talking about. The city of Chicago banned handguns. McDonald v. Chicago lawsuit. McDonald sued Chicago, saying it was unconstitutional and violated the Second Amendment. Went all the way up to the Supreme Court. My first response is, well, the federal government had no business taking that case. But, because remember, they got no authority over guns. But they did. Clarence Thomas, one of my favorite chief justices of all time, agreed that Chicago should not ban handguns and that it violated the Second Amendment. And he wrote such in his opinion, his consenting opinion, judicial opinion. Typically, I love the man, not right there. After that ruling went down, people who knew me, attended classes, so forth, they blew up my email, they blew up my phone. Man, such a win for gun rights. And I said, don't be so sure. So what do you mean, Doug? The federal government through the Supreme Court just dictated to a city what it can or can't do regarding your gun rights. Are you comfortable with that?
Ooh.
Suddenly, the reality of what the Second Amendment's all about appears. The federal government, none of their business. I don't want them dictating to my city or my state the rules regarding gun rights. I want my locality to make that decision. And if I don't like the decision they make, because I'm closer to them, I can fight it. I can put up a shut up, or I can move to a state that better agrees with what I believe. Because each state has to be responsible for its own issues, including gun rights. Yeah, but Doug, man, California, they're out of control. I know. And you know whose fault it is?
The people.
Our fault. Look in the mirror.
You know,
We let it happen. Go ahead.
And one of the things that we discussed is that every state constitution, you know, every state is its own individual country. I think most people understand that, but in the event that you don't, every state, the United States is essentially 50 individual countries that are united with the federal government. So each state really is its own country.
Right. And its own business.
And it's exactly. Well, each state has its own constitution, but the state of California is the only of the 50 constitutions in the United States that does not have any language in it regarding firearms.
Yeah,
I found that mind-boggling.
Yeah. Only one. Chris Ann Hall and I were talking about that one time. She was like, she'd done the research. So I'm like, yeah, I know. All right, now let's read the language. Now that we've done all that, we've opened that up. Let's break down the language of the Second Amendment to help you further understand why what I'm saying is so. And it's the shortest amendment, I believe. I believe it's the shortest of all of them. I think it's even shorter than the 27th. I'm just curious now. It's about 3 words shorter than the 27th Amendment. So it's not a lot of words, but it says a lot. A well-regulated militia. Stop. What's a well-regulated militia? What's the militia? We have the organized militia. We have the unorganized militia. The organized militia is the state militia, which still exists. California has a state militia. I have 2 friends that are parts of the state militia. It's volunteer. When I say voluntary, I mean completely voluntary. They don't get paychecks unless there are occasions where they will get compensated, but they don't get paychecks. It's a voluntary force, volunteer force. Well-regulated militia. Militia could be an organized militia like the state militia. The National Guard is considered a part of that militia. While I'm not sure I agree with that, we'll go with it. The Air Guard, the Naval Militia, that's the organized militia.
The naval militia.
Yeah, you never heard of the Naval Militia?
I've never heard of the naval militia.
Oh, look it up. Fascinating stuff. It's a local, state-run, voluntary, basically like a Coast Guard, but it's not military. It's a militia. Yeah, I've even thought about volunteering for that, except for I don't think there's one in my immediate area, mainly because I don't live near water. But anyway, I'm inland, man. The thing about Ron and I, where we live in California, we live inland where it's hot. It gets real hot during the summer. I get all excited because tonight my class is in Dana Point at the harbor. Now that's the place to be. Sea breeze. But anyway, okay, so we've got these. Then you got the unorganized militia, and the United States code, the US code actually does delineate between the two. Well, who's the unorganized militia? Look in the mirror, the rest of us. When asked after the Second Amendment was ratified who the militia is, George Mason said that the militia is the whole of the people and a few politicians. Even back then, they only trusted a few of them. Okay. Man, my mustache is driving me nuts, man. It's tickling my nose, man. That's why you got to keep these things short. But anyway, so well-regulated militia. So we have this militia. There's an organized militia, well-regulated. What does that mean? Well-regulated? Do you mean regulated by the government? No. Well-regulated militia, if you remember when we talked about the Commerce Clause, the word regulated means to put in good order, to make regular. So well-regulated militia is a militia that's in good order. Well, how do we put it in good order? Let's go back to page.
I think that's I think there's a very interesting point to be made here that a lot of people may have forgotten that you've made before. Is that a lot of the language in the Second Amendment, or excuse me, a lot of the language that was used in the Constitution, the etymology of those words is different today than it was then. And we actually use the etymology of the current state of that word and superimpose it on what the true meaning of what it meant of what they meant back then.
That's why this has gotten hard to understand.
Right. And I think that a lot of that is deliberate.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I really get into the word regulated, especially because it's a great example of that.
Yeah.
If you look at today's dictionary versus the 1828 Webster's dictionary, which I've got, I was going to pull it out, but I don't know where it's at now. It's about this big. The definition for regulated in today's dictionary is to control or restrict through law. The number one definition, aside from weights and measures back then, was to put in good order. Weights and measures being something like, you put sugar in your tea, you're regulating sweetness, things like that.
I think another word in the Second Amendment is the right to bear.
Oh, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
We're coming there. Okay.
He's getting excited because he knows what's coming. He's heard this stuff. He's like a kid. Me, I know.
Yes, I do.
All right, but let's go over to page 7 if you have a pod constitution like this. Otherwise, go to Article 1, Section 8. Article 1, Section 8, the third to last clause or paragraph in that section. Remember also online, if you go to douglasvgibbs.com, on the far right, there's going to be a link, a little picture, and it says above it, documents. Click that. You can hit Constitution. Constitution is available for you on your computer as well. Article 1, Section 8, the third to last paragraph of that section. It says that Congress shall have the power to, the word to is what it starts with. The Congress shall have power comes before that in each of them, to provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress. In other words, Congress writes here's how we want you to train the militia, here's how we want you to take care of them. But state, it belongs to you. It's your militia. Remember, the militias are what fought the American Revolution. Farmers, storekeepers, even a few lawyers were in there. Lawyers with guns. That almost sounds like the title of a song. But anyway, that's a well-regulated militia, because during the American Revolution, they weren't exactly in good order, were they? No uniforms, or few uniforms, barefoot. Only the officers really had uniforms. Many of them had no socks. That's what Martha Washington was known for. Martha Washington used to darn socks for the troops. And if you read the story about the Battle of Trenton, you really get to understand how important it was to need socks, because those guys are walking barefoot in the snow until their feet were bleeding to fight that battle. It wasn't exactly a well-regulated militia. So they learned their lesson. So Second Amendment begins a well-regulated militia. A militia that's in good order. Here's a key. I think this is what helped turn on the light for Ron, this next part. Being necessary to the security of a free state. Why does the militia exist? Because they're necessary to the security of a free state. Free state, security. Security from who? From whom, should I say? From a foreign government? From a foreign invader? Well, yeah, partly. But there's another enemy that's even more fierce and more dangerous. A potentially tyrannical local government, a federal government per se. So the militia exists for the purpose of a free state, the security of a free state. So now, for sure, we don't want the federal government to have anything to say about keeping and bearing arms, because the whole point of keeping and bearing arms is so that the people are armed to defend against enemies, foreign and domestic. Almost felt like Biden. I want to whisper domestic.
Doug, I want to clarify. When you say free state, do you mean the state of the state, or do you mean like the individual?
You mean like enemy of the state, or the state,
No,
state of California?
Like the state of California, or the state, because the state as the United States itself.
I know what you're trying to say. Yeah. So that's why I said enemy of the state. When someone says enemy of the state, what do they mean by state? Enemy of California? No, enemy of the system, right?
Okay.
Enemy of the state. So he's asking, is that what I mean by state, or do I mean individual states? The state there is, the word state there is that capitalized. So it means each individual state.
So in
a free California, a free Massachusetts, a free Connecticut, a free North Carolina. I had someone all the way from North Carolina in my class this morning in Fallbrook. A free Florida.
Wow.
Yeah, she was visiting her sister, and her sister says, "Have I got a Constitution class for you?" And now I gave her a card, a whole bunch of pocket constitutions. She's ready to roll back to North Carolina, let them know what's going on. So a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. So if a state needs to be free and needs to be protected against potentially federal government, we don't want the federal government making any laws regarding firearms. Should the states be able to make laws? Yeah, we want them to be able to say, you know what, militia, I want to make sure you got the best firearms. Matter of fact, our law is going to say you're going to have the best. The state could do that. Or if the state says, you know, it's not necessary. And then the people say, wait a second, I have a right to keep and bear arms. Oh, no, we're not taking away. We just, we're going to have just a few rules. See, that dialogue is supposed to go on, right? So a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right, it's not a privilege, it's not an opportunity, it's a right. God gave us this right. The right of the people, that's all of us, to keep, to own, to possess, and bear arms. Now I really want to find that dictionary of mine, and I just don't know what I did with it.
We're going to do part 2 next week. You can find it.
I'll make sure I have my dictionary available for that. If you look up the word bear in that 1828 Webster's dictionary, or you can even do it online, there's a mess load of definitions. Under one of them, I think it's like the 7th one down or something like that. It gives an example of bear. And it says to bear a gun under one's coat. To bear under one's coat.
Okay, here it is. I just looked it up. To bear as a mark or authority or distinction as to bear a sword, a badge, a name, to bear arms in a coat.
So to bear means to what then?
To have, if you bear arms in a coat, you're essentially concealing.
So to bear is to conceal carry. Right?
Yes.
So to bear arms is to conceal carry. So my first question is, why do I need a permit? Well,
here it is. Here it is. Or to carry on or maintain. Oh no, that's I saw carry. I saw the word carry and got excited, but that's actually to carry on, like, and carry on a conversation.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot. There's like 20 meanings to the word bear in the 1828.
So to keep and bear arms, to bear arms is to conceal carry.
To conceal carry.
Shall not be infringed. So federal government can make no law infringing on your right to keep and bear arms. Can the state? I'd rather them not, but they can. Why? Because the states are their own little countries. This is our own little culture, and it's up to our state on what we do. And this is our little house. We're going to make the rules of what happens inside our house. I don't care what the neighbor does in his house. That's his problem.
Now,
I got my neighbor over here, Arizona. I got another neighbor over here, Nevada. Across the street, I got Oregon. Up the street, I got Wyoming. I don't care what they do inside their house. I have rules for inside my house. And I'm going to set up my rules. Federal government's got no business. What goes on inside my house is my business. And if I decide I want to make some laws regarding that, I can. Now, that said, remember, your right to keep and bear arms is still your right. God gave it to you. I am not saying the state can stomp all over your gun rights. I am saying that the Second Amendment applies only to the federal government and that it's up to your state to make other laws that may be necessary. Otherwise, all federal gun laws are unconstitutional. Go ahead, Ron.
So, well, and see, that is what led me to believe, because I'm of the opinion that I was originally of the opinion that California was jumping all over the Second Amendment due to their draconian laws about guns. Mm-hmm. And I think where you made the point, or I don't remember exactly when this was, but there was a decision that came down as a result of people in California challenging the gun law, and it went to a federal court, and the federal court overrode the state, overrode the state, and then
McDonald's v. Chicago being one of them.
Maybe, yeah, I don't remember exactly which one that was, but they overrode the state, and I was happy about that. And you were like, well, would you be happy if they overrode something else?
Yeah. Or how about this? Remember the Heller case there in Washington, D.C.? The Heller case, in the Heller case, the Supreme Court determined that your right is an individual right. Now now we have McDonald v. Chicago, where the Supreme Court is telling the city of Chicago, you cannot ban handguns. So they're dictating to the city what they can or can't do regarding our gun rights. What happens now that we've given the federal government that authority to dictate to our cities and our states what they can or can't do regarding the gun rights? What if then the Heller case gets revisited and the courts change their opinion and say, you know what, it's not an individual right, it's a collective right, which means you can only own a firearm if you're a member of a collective approved organization like the police or the military. Otherwise, you can't have a gun. Are you still happy about the Supreme Court dictating to the city about what they can or can't do regarding gun rights? That's the kicker for me. I don't want the federal government dictating to my local area. That's my local area's business. Okay, fine. California's stupid. They're doing some real stupid stuff, but at least we're making that decision. We're not being dictated to regarding it by the federal government. we'll fix it. Trust me, we'll fix it. And personally, I think California is an extremely red state. But that's beside the point.
1 second, 1 second, Doug. Jason, Ronald, I don't think we're arguing the Second Amendment. I think what we're arguing or what we're discussing is how the states actually do have a right to enact laws against that maybe
Regarding guns, yeah.
maybe contradict the Second Amendment, and that's what and I agree. I totally agree with you. But the states actually have a right to make laws. It's the only the Constitution only applies to the federal government, and that's the point that we're making.
Yeah, and that was a piece of paper. Now I'm not. Once again,
one second, because I want to say this because I know there's a lot of people out there who were dealing with the same thing that I dealt with, and I absolutely understand your frustration, Jason. I get it. Or maybe not. Maybe frustration is the wrong word, but I actually absolutely understand your point.
Yeah, because you were there.
Yeah.
And once again, I'm not saying I want the state jumping all over my gun rights. My responsibility is to make sure my state doesn't. That's my responsibility, not some piece of paper, and definitely not federal government's. That's my responsibility. Our responsibility to make sure our state abides by what we want it to do. Do we want the laws saying that you can't buy a gun without parental approval if you're under 18 or under 16 or under 14, depending on the state? That's for us to decide, not for the federal government to decide for us. That's my point.
And I get, trust me, that was the hardest thing for me to swallow. It was the hardest pill for me to swallow when we first had this discussion, because I was overlaying the Second Amendment onto California. Right. And primarily that's where I'm talking about. I'm talking about California. So now I do believe that I don't know if this is a Second Amendment issue, because this is more of a reciprocity issue. I don't think it has anything to do with the Second Amendment. I think it has more to do with Commerce Clause, because if the Commerce Clause, if a driver's license is good in one state, if it's good in one state,
it's not the Commerce Clause. That would be the Full Faith and Credit Clause, Article 4. I apologize,
but I knew you were
okay.
correctly, but you understood the point. That wasn't necessarily a Second Amendment.
Yeah, if your license is good elsewhere, why isn't your concealed carry permit?
Right.
And personally, I like the constitutional carry thing that's going on with these states. Now, some of the states that have constitutional carry, they only allow it for their residents. If you're not a resident, you still need to check in or whatever. But some of these states, they don't care who you are. Concealed carry, it's okay. No permit required, no matter where you're from. You're inside that state, concealed carry is okay.
I want to address something with.
And I bet your crimes will go way down in those states.
There's something going on in the chat room. Jason is very, very active today, and I just wanted to let Jason know. Yes, I don't think you truly understand the nature. Believe it or not, there are a lot of Californians. There's still probably more guns in California than there are in any other state,
except for Texas.
I don't even know about that.
Well, all right. Let's put it this way: registered firearms.
Right.
Exactly. Unregistered, we might beat Texas too.
Right. So anyway.
Well, and it's funny because I hate the gun laws of California. I don't think they should be passing them, but I don't think it's the Second Amendment or the federal government's job to tell them that. It's my job. It's our job. And there's no language regarding guns in the state constitution. Why hasn't a gun group in California got enough signatures to put something in that constitution? Because guess what? We have that ability, and we haven't. And I actually tried with a group. Oh, I can't remember Robles's first name. That me and a guy named Robles. He used to be sheriff of San Bernardino County way back when. And back in, I think it was 2010. I think it was. We were trying to get signatures to put some language on the in the state constitution here in California, and we couldn't get enough signatures. Not because of I don't know why, but because trust me, there's a lot of gun owners out here. But anyway, so well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Think American Revolution, but also think dystopian future with Biden in charge. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Shall not be infringed in any way, shape, or form. If the Second Amendment also applied to the states, that would mean there'd be no allowance for any gun laws, period. Do we really want that? I'm sure there's a gun law somewhere. You're kind of happy it's on the books. I don't want the federal government making that law. The state can. And we want the states to be able to do that. But we have to be responsible enough as citizens to keep them from going beyond those necessary laws. Because guess what? It's our republic. If we're going to claim ownership, we better take ownership. That's one of my frustrations with people, because they say, well, the piece of paper says, I don't care what the Second Amendment says. Have you made sure your state is abiding by the rule of law? Are you involved? When was the last time you went to a city council meeting? Or one of my favorite questions out in public is, how many city council members are on your city council? Most people don't know the answer to that question. You probably do. Most people don't. I remember one time when I first started doing Constitution radio on, it was called Political Pistachio Radio back then, on online radio. And I said I was going to do a man on the street type thing. So I took a recording device with me out. I went to the Temecula Mall and I stopped and I talked to 23 people and I asked them one question. What are the first three words of the preamble to the U.S. Constitution? There's three of the most famous words in history. In fact, they're right behind me.
And they're on my hat.
And they're on your hat. One person said, we the people. 1 out of 23. Our problem isn't the Second Amendment or whether or not it's being followed. Our problem is we are not taking possession of the ownership. We're not taking responsibility of the ownership of our system. We, the people of the United States, the consent to the governed. While we are a republic and voting is only a part of it, there's more to a republic than just voting. Remember that petition the government for redress of grievances? Assembly, speech, press. Maintaining a republic requires a lot more than voting. And we're not doing it.
I wanted to address, Tracy showed up a little bit late and she says, shall not be infringed, period. Right. And Tracy, I think you missed a good portion of what we discussed. And the Second Amendment, what we're talking about is the Second Amendment, as it's written, applies only to the federal government. It does not apply to the states. The states actually have the autonomy to write laws that restrict gun ownership. Now,
here's a question. If the Second Amendment did apply to the states, why would they need gun language in their state constitution?
Right. And I agree with your words, period. I agree with that. But again, I think this was a bitter pill for me to swallow when I came to the realization that the states get to do what they want to do. But see, that's the beautiful thing about
they
how
weren't the enemy originally anyway.
Well, no, I was going to say that's the beautiful thing about the states is because the states have each individual state is competing against each other to say, hey, if you want, we're gonna create laws that if we adhere to your values, then you can come live in our state. So the states actually are competing against each other for residents within the United States. So places like Florida, Texas, Arizona, Idaho, they actually have free gun laws or less gun laws where somebody from California, if they don't like the laws, they can move to Arizona or they can move to Texas or they can move someplace with more free laws that fit their value system. So, and I think that's the point. Because if you look at the 1934 National Firearms Act and the 1968 Gun Control Act, those led that legislation in the 1934
very unconstitutional.
If I'm not mistaken, that's what led to the formation of the ATF. And that all that is illegal. That is absolutely unconstitutional. And if any of you guys are very interested in that, I would highly recommend that you get a book called Unintended Consequences. It's fantastic. The first 2/3 of the book goes over historical things, and it actually talks about the 1934 NFA and how it was challenged in court, but then anyway. I'm not going to give it
ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. That sounds like a bar I want to visit, not a federal agency.
Right. So, but anyway, the Doug, it's 3:58, so I'm gonna cut it off.
Oh man, time flew.
Time flies, yeah. But
we're gonna get more into the Second Amendment next time, and I want to start answering questions. I want the chat room questions rolling next week. That's your teaser to come back. I want to answer your questions. Whatever question is, write it down, remember it, or come up with it next week. I want your questions next week.
If you guys have questions, you can send them to me. Send them to warhistorian@gmail. WARHISTORIAN. That's one of my email addresses that I don't really use very often. Send any of your questions to warhistorian@gmail, and that way I'll have a list of questions that I can ask Doug. We're still going to answer questions from the chat, but if you guys have questions that you want to ask, or you're watching this video after the fact and you want to get it answered, send it to that email address, and I'll pull it up and we'll have it for Doug for next week.
Now, two things real quick about next week. Number one, and just as your heads up too, I'm going to do it, but it's going to be with my phone because I'm going to be out of town.
Are you going to be out of town?
Yeah. Well, there's funny things happening next week that happens about once a year that I kind of have to be a part of. It's called my wedding anniversary. And 37 years.
Do you want to push this off one week?
No, this is too important. This is good.
Okay, so maybe
I've done these Zooms on my phone before. While it's not as perfect quality, it's not as great as this, it's good enough. It'll do the job.
All right.
Because this is too important. This subject, I don't want to have an interruption.
Well, I want to make the caveat, Doug, that if we get into next week and we get a lot of questions and people still have more questions and we don't get all the questions, we'll go a third week because this is
your show, people.
Exactly. This is one of the biggest topics that everybody wants to weigh in on. So,
and I'll answer the questions. And I want you to do a little research. Look up the incorporation of the Bill of Rights. See what you think of that. Look it up. But I want to say a couple things real quick before we go. Number one, for those of you who are in Southern California, my Huntington Beach class on Monday will be meeting. The Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday classes, no classes. So I'll be out of town. Speaking of that Huntington Beach class, if you're in the Huntington Beach area, and I know a couple of you are because you've sent me emails, visit the class. It's the smallest class. It really needs your attendance. So go to douglasvgibbs.com or politicalpistachio.com, hit classes, all the addresses and stuff. Also, I wanted to thank you guys. You guys have been buying books, but really a lot of them, and I appreciate it. I'm working on new books. Stay tuned. I'm going to get some new ones out. And finally, and I've done this before and always makes them blush, but thank you, sir. As always, Ron, you've been just kick ass.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Somebody's asking me what my shirt says. My shirt says an armed society is a polite society.
You think he picked that shirt for this show?
And my background, come on now. So I want to encourage everybody that if you've lived in another state, look at your state constitution and look at the state constitution from where you used to live. And if it's multiple states, look at multiple state constitutions where you've lived and read the language in your state constitution that talks about guns and see how it matches to the Second Amendment, specifically to the U.S. Constitution.
The similarities are amazing, but the shall not be infringed is typically not there because, well, shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed, period, as our one listener said, and she's right. So that's why every single federal gun law is unconstitutional. Yeah,
every single federal gun law is unconstitutional, and the ATF is an unconstitutional agency.
Yeah, like I said, it sounds more like the name of a bar I'd like to go to. Alcohol, tobacco, firearms. I'm there.
Exactly.
What a good time.
All right, guys. On that note, again, we're not gonna cut you guys short. If you guys have more questions and we can't get to them next week, we'll go a third week. This is I want everybody to feel like they actually got their stay in and whatnot.
Sure.
So anyway, guys, appreciate you. I'm not gonna take any more time away from Mike Lindell.
Yeah, there's that, and plus I can get on the road. And yes, that's what I got right in front of me. I'm recording it, by the way.
And I think Scott's going to be doing a show any minute on his Rumble channel. So because the YouTube channel went down, 21 went down, and was taken down, but we have I have uploaded a number on 23 earlier today. So anyway, stay in the fight, guys. See you next week.